parent's worst nightmare caught on camera. A woman says this video shows a nurse her son with cerebral palsy.
What you doing? What you doing?
7 nurses, 8 cameras that caught what would otherwise have been denied. In more than one of these cases, the footage was clear, and it still was not enough. These are the stories, and the outcomes are as disturbing as the abuse. Case 1, Texas nursing home.
Abuse at a Texas City nursing home was caught on camera.
We're told the employees involved have been fired. We want to warn you, the video we're about to show you is upsetting. 87-year-old Cornelio Salinas, who only has one leg, was on the floor when 2 employees hit, kicked, and dragged him back to his bed. They then closed the curtain, hiding everything that happened afterward.
Inside Solidago Health and Rehabilitation in Texas City, a family had installed a camera outside their 87-year-old father's room because he kept telling them he was being mistreated. Nobody believed him. The footage proved he was right. Nursing homes are meant to be safe places where the elderly receive care and support. In Texas City, however, disturbing footage revealed the opposite. What unfolded on camera in October 2022 shocked both a family and the community. Sunday, October 2nd, 2022. 87-year-old Cornelio Salinas, who had only one leg, was left bruised and hospitalized after an incident that was first reported as an accident. The nursing home contacted his relatives and claimed he had fallen from his bed. "We seen the bruising around his eyes and he was in a neck brace. So we went back on the Ring camera and seen what had happened." When the family reviewed the footage, Salinas had not simply fallen. Instead, 2 employees attacked him while he was on the floor, hitting, kicking, and dragging him back into his bed. The video captured everything in detail. Once they placed him back, one worker pulled the curtain around the bed, deliberately hiding the rest of the abuse from the camera. His grandson later explained that the employees remained behind that curtain for 15 to 20 minutes. When it was pulled open again, Salinas was back on the floor. That was not a reflex. That was a choice. Someone looked directly at the camera, understood what it was recording, and deliberately blocked its view before continuing. Which means the question the family could not stop asking was a simple one. How many times had that curtain been pulled before they installed the camera? Salinas had been telling his family for years that he was being mistreated inside the facility, but without evidence, his complaints had been dismissed. The surveillance finally gave them proof. The family broke down in tears, realizing that their loved one had endured abuse from people who were supposed to be his caregivers. Salinas's relatives expressed anger and frustration, saying they wanted justice, charges against the employees, and for the facility itself to be shut down. As soon as the video surfaced, Solidago Health and Rehabilitation suspended the employees identified as Lisa Cooper and Casey Johnson and launched an internal investigation. Within days, they were terminated for violating company policies. Monday, October 3rd, 2022. Salinas was still in the hospital recovering. His family made clear he would not be returning to Solidago and began working to transfer him somewhere safer. They stressed they did not only want the nurses fired, they wanted legal action and full accountability in court. October 7th, 2022. Lisa Cooper and Casey Johnson were charged with felony abuse and injury to the elderly. Their bonds were each set at $100,000. 2 employees charged, felony counts. A family who finally had the proof they needed. But in the next case, the abuse did not happen in a nursing home. It happened inside a family's own home, and the person being harmed could not say a single word about it. Case 2. One pill at a time. In Punta Gorda, Florida, a 70-year-old woman noticed that pills were disappearing from a prescription bottle in her own home. She was not imagining it, and the person taking them was the nurse she had trusted to help care for her husband. December 2016. Diana Barbetta had recently filled a prescription for lorazepam. She told detectives she had used only 12 pills since it was filled, but the bottle had 36 fewer than expected. At the time, the only people with access to the home were her son and the home health nurse, who visited several times a week. That nurse was Jessica Brown. Jessica Brown was a 39-year-old licensed home health aide employed by Synergy Home Care, a Venice-based service providing in-home caregivers. She had been hired to help Barbetta care for her husband, who suffered from dementia. At first, Brown appeared to provide the assistance the family needed, but suspicions grew when the missing pills could not be explained. Detectives were contacted, and with Barbetta's permission, they installed surveillance equipment in the kitchen near the cabinet where medications were stored. January 7, 2017. The cameras recorded what was happening. The footage showed Brown opening the cabinet, removing the prescription bottle, and slipping it into her pocket. From another angle, she was seen sliding something into her clothing before returning the container to the cabinet as if nothing had happened. Afterwards, she moved around casually, pausing to adjust items on the counter before walking away with her drink in hand. The act was quiet and careful, but it was now captured in detail on camera. When Brown left the home that day, Barbetta checked the bottle and discovered 13 more pills missing. Detectives already monitoring the situation moved quickly. Police pulled Brown over after she left the house. During the stop, she was found with 7 of the stolen pills in her possession. She admitted she had taken 6 more while still inside the home. All 13 missing pills were accounted for, directly tying Brown to the theft. The arrest was immediate. Brown was charged with grand theft of a controlled substance and taken to Charlotte County Jail. During questioning, Brown confessed that she had stolen pills from the home on previous occasions, which explained the original 36 missing pills. Barbetta was left shaken. She had relied on Brown to help care for her husband, who required constant attention. Agencies responding to the case encouraged families with in-home caregivers to consider installing surveillance, noting that vulnerable patients are often targeted precisely because they trust the people caring for them. Not long after her arrest, Synergy Home Care announced that Brown was no longer with them. The 36 pills that first raised the alarm were not a moment of weakness. They were the ones she had already taken before anyone was watching. The camera did not catch the beginning of what Jessica Brown was doing in that home. It caught the end of it. Arrested the same day the camera caught her. Charged. Fired. At least in this case, the system moved. But the next case shows that not everyone who steals from the people in their care is motivated by addiction or desperation. Sometimes the operation goes much deeper than one nurse and one patient. Case 3. Inside the jail. Not every nurse on this list harmed a patient directly. In Coweta County, Georgia, a nurse used her position of trust inside a county jail to do something entirely different. And the surveillance footage that caught her revealed something far larger than one person making a bad decision. Before working at the Coweta County Jail, Chenika LaChantre Roberts had been a licensed practical nurse for several years and was considered reliable. She went on to work in the facility for 3 years, building relationships with both staff and inmates, until a surveillance camera ended her career. May 26, 2022. Cameras inside the jail captured a subtle but incriminating exchange between Roberts and an inmate at the counter. Investigators already tipped about possible smuggling activity watched closely as the inmate leaned forward, reached into Roberts's pocket and retrieved something. He then slipped it down the front of his orange jail jumpsuit, and the object could be seen sliding all the way down the inside of his pants leg. Deputies immediately searched the inmate's cell and pod area. The search uncovered marijuana, tobacco, gambling paraphernalia, and a handmade shank. The findings showed that what was caught on video was not a one-time act. It was part of a larger smuggling operation running inside the facility. June 2, 2022. Roberts was arrested and charged with possession of marijuana with intent to distribute and crossing the guard line with contraband. The case quickly expanded. On June 10th, 6 more people were arrested in connection with the smuggling scheme, including inmates already serving time and at least one person coordinating the operation from outside the jail. That outside coordinator 35-year-old Renita Leonard was charged with conspiracy to cross guard lines with contraband and unlawful use of a telecommunications device to commit a crime. Kenneth Fears, identified as the inmate seen in the video with Roberts, now faced new charges on top of his existing sentence. Deputies locked down the pod and brought in K-9 units for a full sweep. What they found went far beyond marijuana. The search turned up methamphetamine, fentanyl, additional bags of drugs, tobacco, cigarettes, and more weapons. Fentanyl inside a county jail is not a minor contraband violation. A single dose can kill. In an environment where substances are shared, cut, and traded without any knowledge of concentration or dosage, what Roberts brought through that door was potentially lethal for every person in that pod. Investigator Toby Nix made the stakes clear. Anything illegal outside of jail remains illegal inside. Bringing in drugs or contraband directly threatens the safety of every inmate and every staff member in that facility. Roberts remained charged with felony drug offenses. And with methamphetamine and fentanyl now tied to the operation, investigators warned that additional charges could follow. A nurse, a network, fentanyl inside a county jail. But every case so far has involved a facility, a nursing home, a private residence, a jail. The next case brings it back to something more personal. A young man who could not speak, a hidden camera his mother installed because something felt wrong, and a nurse who thought nobody was watching. Case 4. The Home Caregiver. In Sparta, Tennessee, a mother noticed something was wrong with her son. Craig was 20 years old, nonverbal, and wheelchair-bound with cerebral palsy. He relied completely on caregivers for his daily needs. According to his mother, Dawn Caldwell, Craig was usually cheerful and responsive. But after Nurse Milana Smith began working in the home in May 2019, his behavior changed noticeably. He began crying out, hitting the tray on his wheelchair, and showing signs of distress that his mother could not explain. July 7, 2019. Dawn and her husband decided to leave the house for a few hours. Before leaving, they installed hidden cameras to monitor what might be happening while their son was left with the nurse. While on their way back home, Dawn pulled up the live feed from her phone. What she saw made her pull over. She pressed record because she needed proof of what she was watching. Her son was being abused in real time and she was miles away, unable to stop it. The footage showed Smith kicking Craig's foot, slapping him, poking him in the face, and shaking him violently as he sat in his chair. At one point, the nurse sat watching television while roughly flipping pages of a book in front of him, treating him more like a nuisance than a patient who required care. What I seen out here, as far as her taunting, tormenting him, that was enough for me. Dawn immediately rushed home and confronted Smith, ordering her to leave. Once Smith was gone, Dawn contacted the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. She also notified Adult Protective Services and the Tennessee Board of Nursing so that an official investigation could begin. Investigators reviewed the video evidence. The district attorney's office charged Milana Smith with a Class B misdemeanor assault. If she complied, the charges would be cleared from her record. Milana Smith was not sentenced to jail. She was not permanently stripped of her license. She was given a Class B misdemeanor, the kind of charge that gets cleared from your record if you comply with conditions. And then her nursing license was renewed. A woman caught on video kicking, slapping, and shaking a nonverbal man with cerebral palsy was given back her credentials and allowed to keep working. That is not a gap in the system. That is the system working exactly as it was designed. November 13, 2019, another mother from Sparta later learned that Smith had been her own son's nurse. She was sitting in her living room with Smith when she came across the viral video of the abuse. Recognizing Smith's name, she read part of the article aloud, only for the nurse to snatch the phone from her hands and quickly leave the house. Her son had not been harmed. But seeing what happened to Craig left her fearful and angry that Smith had been allowed to keep working in homes despite everything that had been documented on camera. Craig could not speak, He could not defend himself. He could not tell anyone what was happening, and the system that was supposed to protect him gave his abuser back her license. A nurse who kept her license. A victim who could not speak a single word in his own defense. But in the next case, the nurse did not physically harm anyone. She waited. She watched, and she took everything she could from people she had decided were already gone. Case 5. Stealing from the dying. June 30th, 2025. Body camera footage captured the moment officers confronted a nurse as she left her shift at a nursing home. What she said during that arrest is the most disturbing part of this entire case.
Yeah, I was just watching some very interesting video footage from your work.
What are you talking about?
Mind if I search you?
No.
Where did these come from?
Does that matter? We both know where it comes from.
Yeah, I was just watching some very interesting video footage from your work. What are you talking about? You mind if I search you? No. Where did these come from? Does that matter? We both know where it comes from. The nurse, identified in body camera footage only by her first name Jessica, had been working at a nursing home where several vulnerable patients were nearing the end of their lives. Instead of providing comfort and dignity, Jessica used her position to take valuables: cash, personal property, and multiple credit cards. These items were discovered on her during her arrest. The arrest followed an investigation triggered by nursing home surveillance footage that captured Jessica searching through a patient's belongings while they were critically ill. She was also seen removing a Rolex watch from an unresponsive man, a patient she had decided would not notice and whose family rarely visited. When officers pressed her on why she had taken the items, Jessica told them she believed her actions were justified. Her exact words, that the patients were basically dead and their belongings would not be missed. She was not describing an impulse. She was describing a philosophy she had been operating under for nearly a year. Officers recovered the Rolex, between $500 and $600 in cash, and credit cards that matched reports from the nursing home. Jessica was defensive throughout, repeatedly asking if she could leave and questioning whether a warrant was required for the search. Officers challenged her reasoning, pointing out that heirlooms like the Rolex could have been meant for family members or passed down to children. Her responses showed no understanding of the harm she had caused. "I'm going to lose my job." "You already lost your job. We have you on video stealing all of this evidence." It was at that point that Jessica became emotional and admitted she had been stealing for nearly a year. She said the thefts began when she relapsed into drug use and claimed the stolen items were used to support herself and her children. With Jessica going to jail, officers arranged for her child to be collected. Her ex-husband indicated he would immediately pursue full custody. Jessica was formally taken into custody. The case remained under investigation as police worked to identify every patient affected and trace the full extent of her actions. Families of patients were being notified. Some were pursuing civil action against both Jessica and the nursing home for failing to prevent the thefts. Nearly a year of stealing. A Rolex from an unresponsive man. Cash from patients who had no visitors. And a belief that none of it mattered because those people were already gone. But in the next case, the victim was not an elderly patient nearing the end of life. He was days old. And what happened to him in a hospital that was supposed to be the safest place in the world would set off a legal battle that lasted over a year and ended in a way that shocked everyone who had seen the footage. Case 6. The NICU. A nurse roughly picking up Nico, slamming him face first back into the bassinet. February 6, 2023. Inside the neonatal intensive care unit at Good Samaritan University Hospital in West Islip, Long Island, a baby boy named Nico was receiving treatment for antibiotics. His father, Fidel Sinclair, decided to check on him through the NICU window. While standing outside, Sinclair noticed that the curtains around his son's bed were not fully drawn. He could see inside. Something made him reach for his phone. He began filming. What he captured in the next few seconds would become the center of a criminal case and be viewed by millions of people around the world. The footage showed nurse Amanda Burke, then 29 years old, approaching the bassinet. She picked Nico up, abruptly flipped him over and slammed him face down into the bassinet. The act was sudden, forceful, and alarming. Sinclair was so shaken by what he had just filmed that he could barely process it. Nico's mother, Consuelo Saravia, confronted Burke immediately after seeing the video. "I told her, I don't want you to touch my child. You just slammed him." And she said, "If you think I mishandled him, I'm sorry." Burke denied any intent to harm. Within hours, she was removed from duty and fired. Catholic Health, the organization running the hospital, issued a statement that the nurse had been terminated and the Department of Health had been notified. Suffolk County Police began investigating, treating the matter as a potential case of child endangerment. For the parents, the sight of their newborn being handled so violently was devastating. They later described being unable to sleep, staying awake to monitor every nurse who handled Nico after what they had seen. If not for the father filming at that exact moment, the act may never have been caught. April 13, 2023. 2 months after the incident, Amanda Burke was arrested and formally charged with endangering the welfare of a child, a Class A misdemeanor under New York law. Her nursing license was not suspended. Her defense team argued that what was seen on video was a routine repositioning that had been misunderstood, that Nico was never harmed, never placed in danger, and was later medically cleared. Routine repositioning. That was the argument. The parents had a different word for what they watched on video. So did the millions of people who saw it. And so did the prosecutors who filed the charge in the first place. On March 25, 2024, more than a year after the incident, prosecutors dropped the charges. Expert review had concluded that Burke's actions were not likely to have caused injury, and that the evidence could not prove criminal negligence beyond a reasonable doubt. The charge was dismissed. Amanda Burke kept her nursing license. She continued working as a registered nurse at other facilities. Nico's family was devastated. They had wanted full accountability, not only for their son, but to ensure no other infant was treated the same way. The footage spoke for itself. The system decided otherwise. Charges filed, then dropped. A license intact. A nurse still working with patients. But the next case involves a victim who also could not speak, could not call for help, and could not tell anyone what was being done to her. And the officer who reviewed the footage used one specific word to describe what he saw: torture. Case 7. Acts of torture. May 3, 2025. A mother in St. Cloud, Florida, noticed red cuts and scrapes on her daughter's face. Her daughter was 18 years old, nonverbal, quadriplegic, and had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. She could not speak. She could not move independently. She could not tell anyone what had happened to her. Her mother checked the home surveillance footage. What she saw made her call the police immediately. The nurse who had been caring for her daughter overnight was 24-year-old Nia Ayers, a licensed practical nurse who had worked in that home for over a year. According to the arrest warrant, the time-stamped footage showed Ayers repeatedly taping the victim's mouth shut, then ripping the tape off. It showed her holding a washcloth over the victim's mouth for 10 seconds, then again for 7 seconds, while the paralyzed young woman tensed her body and tried to move her head away. It showed Ayers shaking the victim's BiPAP breathing machine, the device connected directly to her nose, so aggressively that it caused a nosebleed. The officer who reviewed the footage described what he saw as acts of torture. Nia Ayers had been licensed as a practical nurse since 2021. She had no prior complaints, no disciplinary actions, not a single documented concern in 4 years of working with vulnerable patients. She worked for 2 separate healthcare companies, both of which were notified immediately after her arrest. St. Cloud Police Chief Douglas Gerke did not mince his words. This is a truly heinous act. The victim in this case is completely unable to defend herself or cry out for help. Ayers turned herself into St. Cloud Police on May 7th and was booked into Osceola County Jail without bond. Police said they believed there may be additional victims and urged any family whose loved one had received care from Ayers to come forward. A mother noticed something was wrong because she saw marks on her daughter's face. The same way Dawn Caldwell noticed something was wrong because her son stopped smiling. In both cases, a hidden camera was the only witness that could not be silenced. And in both cases, the victim could not say a single word in their own defense. But nothing on this list, not the curtain pulled across the bed, not the pills stolen one at a time, not the newborn slammed into a bassinet. Nothing prepares you for the final case. Because in the final case, the family had hours of footage, the abuse was documented, the evidence was clear, and it still led almost nowhere. Case 8. The Luxury Care Home. The final case on this list is not the most violent. It is the most expensive, and it produced the most damning outcome of anything you have watched today. We were looking to put her somewhere she could be looked after professionally and in a safe environment. In fact, it turned out to be the complete opposite. January 2021. Ann King was 88 years old, a retired nurse and living with dementia. Her family admitted her to Reigate Grange, a luxury care home in Surrey operated by Signature Senior Living. £8,000 a month. That is what her family paid for what they were told was premium care. More than £96,000 a year. In return, they expected safety, dignity, and professional support for a woman who could not advocate for herself. What the hidden camera recorded instead was something her son Richard described as breaking him completely. In the months following her admission, her children Richard Last and Claire Miller began to notice troubling signs that their mother was not being properly cared for. Growing increasingly suspicious, Richard installed a hidden camera on her bedside table in the autumn of 2021. The camera remained in place through her final months at Reigate Grange and captured what followed. The footage showed staff taunting, mocking, and swearing at Ann King when she was visibly confused and frightened. On multiple occasions, she was roughly handled, causing her to cry out in distress. At one point, she was left lying on the floor for almost 50 minutes before anyone attempted to assist her. The abuse was not limited to verbal cruelty. A cleaner struck Ann with a rag that had been used to clean a toilet, while she was lying defenseless in her bed. The same worker threatened to dump a rubbish bin on her head and made indecent gestures close to her face. Other staff flickered light switches deliberately to confuse her and watched passively as she struggled in distress. This was not one incident on one bad day. The camera recorded it happening repeatedly over months. I broke. I totally broke. I could hear Mom screaming, and it broke me. Hours of recordings, clear footage, repeated documented abuse of an elderly woman with dementia who was paying £8,000 a month to be kept safe. The authorities reviewed it. The Crown Prosecution Service argued there was not enough evidence to pursue charges. All Surrey police could do was issue the cleaner who struck her with a community resolution, a low-level out-of-court penalty, not a charge, not a prosecution, a community resolution. In March 2022, Richard and Claire removed their mother from Reigate Grange. Ann King died at home in October 2022, just months after leaving the facility. Her death was ruled natural. Her children believe the abuse and neglect she endured played a major role in her rapid decline. September 22, 2023, nearly a year after her death, the Care Quality Commission announced a criminal investigation into Reigate Grange. The manager at the time of the abuse was reassigned to another Signature facility. The staff captured in the recordings were no longer employed. The company said the behavior was reprehensible and stated it had cooperated fully with authorities. An ITV News investigation found that more than 1,000 abuse and neglect complaints were logged in care homes across England in the previous year. Approximately 1% led to criminal charges. 1%. Ann King's case was not an exception. It was the rule. Nobody has been prosecuted for what was recorded at Reigate Grange. The footage exists, the evidence is documented. And the system looked at all of it and decided that was not enough. 8 cases. 8 cameras that caught what would otherwise have been denied, dismissed, or quietly buried. In almost every case on this list, the families were told their concerns were unfounded, until the footage proved otherwise. The question is not whether abuse happens in care facilities. The question is how much of it never gets caught because there was no camera in the room. If someone you love is in a care facility right now, drop a comment. And subscribe, because these stories are not rare. They are just rarely documented.